There's a new head coach on the 40 acres. A handful of Longhorns prepare for the NFL draft, and we look back on softball's historic season. All this and more coming up next on College Press Box. Hello and welcome into the first social distancing College Press Box ever. I'm your host, Thomas Fitch. We are coming to you from multiple states, multiple countries, but we are still going to give you the sports information that you need. And we want to thank you for joining us, and we hope that you are all staying healthy and safe. Now, unlike most shows, we do not actually have a ton of sports to get to, but we do have a good amount of news from the past couple of weeks to fill you in on from the 40 acres. Now, first of all, this should not be a surprise, but the Big 12 Conference has officially canceled all remaining winter and spring sports. This announcement came back in March following the Big 12's original suspension of athletics through March 29th. Spring practice for football has been canceled, has been suspended, but it is unsure when that will return. Softball finishes number one in the final Softball America poll after a historic 24-3 season that included 5 wins against ranked teams. Meanwhile, the NCAA has ruled that they will give all spring athletes an extra year of eligibility, meaning that 4th and 5th year seniors have the option to return and compete in next season. The NCAA has also adjusted financial aid rules, allowing teams to carry more scholarship members to account for players who use their extra year of eligibility. Now, in light of this NCAA ruling giving athletes an extra year of eligibility, Texas softball pitcher Miranda Elish has announced that she will be returning for her 5th year. Elish was 11-3 on the season before he was canceled. She had a 1.25 ERA, 96 strikeouts, had a complete game, a no-hitter, and to go along with all of that, she was batting .370. Meanwhile, on Friday, Texas Athletic Director Chris Del Conte announced that they would not be extending the contract of Texas women's basketball coach Karen Aston. In Aston's 8 years at Texas, she led the Longhorns to the NCAA tournament 6 times, reaching the Sweet 16 on 4 of those occasions and the Elite 8 once. It was also announced on Sunday that she would be replaced by former Mississippi State head coach Vic Schaefer. Now, Schaefer, a Texas native, has a long resume, including 2 National Coach of the Year awards, 2 SEC championships, 4 Final Four appearances, and 1 NCAA national championship. Now joining us to discuss all the changes that have occurred over the past couple of weeks is our analyst, Clark Dalton. Clark, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Now, Clark, obviously you never want a season to be canceled, regardless of the circumstances. But of the teams who had their season canceled, which would you say benefited the most from this happening?
I don't think any team benefited from the cancellations at all. That's not to avoid the question, but you have to understand the long-term implications of this pandemic. These athletes were looking forward to joining the prestigious history of Texas athletics by competing in Big 12 championships and national tournaments, and that has been taken away from them. You had seniors who, when they walked on to the 40 acres 4 years ago, dedicated their heart and soul to the program. They've lost their last triumph in Aston. It's an emotional blow to everyone who is involved. Additionally, you lose a large portion of the off season since you can't access facilities. Yeah, you can work out at home, but you can't replicate the same intensity as a more formal session.
Yeah, you mentioned that none benefited from this, though. Shaka Smart might beg to differ. However, who would you say that the cancellation of the spring and winter seasons, which team would you say it hurt the most?
Softball. This team was on a roll headed into Big 12 play. They had a 24-3 record, totaled 199 runs, and had an ERA of 1.78. Additionally, they had proved their legitimacy as a national power, knocking off teams like the defending national champion UCLA. It appeared that their talent and swagger would allow them to go toe-to-toe with Oklahoma and maybe drive them to being one of the 4 teams in June that had a chance at the national championship. But they will never know and always ask, what if? It would be frustrating to have the possibility of a championship in the back of your mind, and it was erased by a situation that was out of your hand.
Yeah, I mean, we had talked about softball earlier in the show, and I mean, talked about an incredible season. But the NCAA has to try to remedy having to cancel the season. They're offering an extra year of eligibility to seniors. So for you, Clark, which winter or spring sports senior on the 40 acres would you want to return next year the most?
I would love to have any of these seniors back. I see bright things ahead of them down the road. But if I had to pick one, I'm going to discuss a sport we haven't talked about extensively on College Press Box, and that is tennis. So I'm going to go with the Tirati twins, Anna and Bianca. They are two of the best players in college tennis. They've been ranked in the top 10 individually. They put Texas back on the map. In 2018, 2019, and 2020, Texas was ranked in the ITA top 5 3 times. They hadn't done that since 2006 before the Tirati twins came here. They played with a competitive fire and class that has left a mark on the program, and they will try to emulate going forward.
Yeah, the Tirati twins, so incredible. Now, meanwhile, on the basketball court, maybe one of the most surprising decisions to some was Texas's decision to move on from Karen Aston and not extend her contract. But Clark, should people be surprised? And what is your reaction to Texas making this move?
Decisions, especially this one, are tough to make. When someone is taking the team to new levels, yet not the levels that some individuals expect, it creates emotions on both sides. However, you have to move forward and try to steer the program in the direction you feel it needs to go. Aston has definitely returned the program to a standard of excellence, earning multiple NCAA tournament wins, taking the Longhorns as far as the Elite Eight in 2016. She's proven her credibility as a head coach. With that being said, Texas fans should greet new coach Vic Schaefer with open arms. He led Mississippi State to back-to-back Final Fours in 2017 and 2018. Hopefully he can have the same success on the 40 acres.
Well, Clark, thanks so much for joining us. Great analysis as usual. Now let's transition to things maybe more outside of the Austin landscape. And just as on the 40 acres, the larger sporting world has been put on pause for the time being as we wait out the effects of the virus. The NBA, NHL, MLB, and most World Soccer Leagues have suspended their season for the time being. The PGA Tour has canceled events through June, with the exception of the PGA Championship, the US Open, and the Masters. The PGA Championship has been rescheduled for August, the US Open in September, and the Masters in November. Meanwhile, the British Open has been canceled for 2020. In the NFL, Roger Goodell announced that the NFL draft will still be conducted. However, it will now occur in a virtual format, with EA Sports creating animated graphics for the event. Team officials will be working and making the selections from their own home, since the team facilities have been closed indefinitely by the league. Now, while there are many different scenarios for how the NBA should finish the season, one of the newest and most intriguing methods would end the season where things stand now and have a postseason tournament that would occur in Las Vegas. CNBC's Jabari Young reported that he heard from an NBA executive that in this format, there would be a play-in tournament for lower-seeded teams to determine who makes the actual tournament, that is. The first round would then be a best-of-5 series, followed by single elimination for the subsequent rounds up until the finals, which would then go back to the best-of-5 format. Now, none of this has been confirmed, but is definitely one of the scenarios the league is looking into currently. Now, while sporting events have been canceled across the world, might merely just be a loss of entertainment to some, it's a loss of livelihood to others, specifically stadium and team employees who wouldn't be making a salary without games being played. To try and support these workers, many team owners and players have taken pay cuts or donated part of their salary. Many NBA owners have announced that they will still pay stadium workers through the end of their season, and players such as Kevin Love, Freddie Freeman, Blake Griffin, Zion Williamson, Rudy Gobert, and hundreds of other athletes across the world have pledged millions of dollars in donations towards these workers, other charities, and hospitals. Now joining us to talk more about this barren sports landscape, we welcome in our analysts Zach Leff and David West. Now, guys, I mentioned one of the proposed NBA tournament formats a minute ago, but to y'all, what would be your dream format if the NBA does restart the season? And David, we'll start with you.
Thanks for having me, Thomas. Obviously, in a perfect world, we want to all see the NBA return to its landscape, and we want to see the regular season played out. That's me speaking optimistically. In all likelihood, realistically speaking, I do think the NBA will cut its regular season in half. See, what most people don't know is the NBA needs to reach at least 70 games played to receive this financial incentive. So I do think the priority for the NBA right now is to make sure they get that 70 games played. And from there, I do think, again, the NBA season will be cut in half, if you ask me. I think the priority then shifts to making it a playoff push. But I do think the NBA season will resume.
Yeah, reaching that 70 games definitely will be something that they will be trying as much as they can to get there. Zach, what do you say?
Yeah, watch. When it comes to the NBA playoffs and everything, I think what's going to end up happening, and it might be an unpopular opinion, I do see the top 4 teams in each conference, being the 2 teams that being the 8 teams that end up in the NBA playoffs. However, there are certain teams that we did want to see that are at that 5-6 line, like the Philadelphia 76ers in the East and the Dallas Mavericks and Houston Rockets in the West, that could easily make a run and deserve to be in the NBA playoffs. But making it those top 4 teams in each conference, you are getting the best of the best playing every night. Now, I do agree with David. You do need to get to that 70-game mark, and maybe those teams will be able to sneak in. But the issue is, like they've been saying, you said earlier, Thomas, with the format, there's not enough time to, transition to get a small break. I know they've had a break now, but they're going to have they're going to need some break in between from this season to the next. So I can see a smaller playoff format with maybe starting, or either a smaller playoff format with less teams, or same amount of teams, and maybe you do best of 3, best of 5, and maybe the NBA Finals is the only one that's a best of 7.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Who knows if the NBA season will come back. I know we're all hoping that we can still get some basketball before the year is up. Now, in the baseball world, while the MLB hasn't announced their plan to move forward yet, it is more than likely that if they do start back, they will have a shortened season. For each of y'all, which teams would you say can benefit the most from this change? And Zach, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm going to say this right now, but I think the team that's benefited the most is the Houston Astros. And they took so much heat during the offseason for all the criticism and the scandal, and they deserved it. 100% deserved it after the egregious act and misconduct that they had during the season with the cheating scandal. However, a few things happen. Watch, the season slows down. They're going to have less games now. So, when they go to away stadiums, they'll have less people booing them, I guess, and less games. 2, the players will now have time to think about what the actions they committed and if they were wrong, because they got very lucky. The MLB could have easily suspended their season and maybe didn't allow them to play at all, or, individual players. However, the coaches and upper management got blamed, and the players still have a chance to play. For them, I just need – if you're a Houston Astro, you have to be thankful and right now understand that you had all this heat on you, and we are dealing with a very serious issue in this country right now, and we're happy, and you better be lucky that none of this heat's going on you, because it's going to come back when baseball starts again, and you're just going to have less of it. So I think the Houston Astros have benefited from this the most to get in a better mental state.
Yeah, and David, what do you have to say?
Yeah, speaking of teams that got lucky, man, my answer will be the Washington Nationals, man. For a guy, I got to watch their spring training recaps and watch some of their highlights and etc. But for me, they looked out of sync. They looked out of order. I didn't really recognize them as opposed to that defending champion we saw last season. So I think all professional teams will benefit from this sort of hiatus. Like Zach said, regain that mental framework and get back in the right state of mind. So I think all teams will benefit. But obviously, if you're the Nationals, you're going to get the best team in and out as you're obviously the national champions. Excuse me. So I think they'll be one of the main beneficiaries for this hiatus.
Yeah, and obviously people for a long time have been calling for the MLB to shorten their season. We'll see if they do come back with a shortened season, if that's something that will last. Now, despite all the cancellations in the sporting world, the NFL draft will still be conducted from April 23rd to 25th, obviously in the virtual format mentioned earlier. There are a number of Longhorns in this year's draft, but at this point, who do you all think has the highest draft stock? And David, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm going to have to say Devin Duvernay. Obviously, it's so close between him and Colin Johnson, but for me, it's Devin Duvernay for a few reasons. One, I feel like his versatility was displayed throughout his tenure at Texas. For one, this man came in as a freshman playing outside receiver, and we obviously saw this past season him transition into the slot position, and obviously had a spectacular season, over 100 receptions on the year. So I think the numbers from this season just tell like a small percent of the picture, but I think his versatility will be able to translate into any NFL roster moving forward. So I'm gonna say Devin Duvernay.
Yeah, Zach, what about you?
I would love to be different, but Devin Duvernay is the answer here. And Duvernay, if you told me before the season started that Devin Duvernay would be, or if you told me that Colin Johnson would not be the first Texas player drafted, I would think you were crazy. However, Duvernay all season, and when Johnson was dealing with injuries, really stepped up for the Longhorns, showed the productivity. I mean, he had plenty of great receptions, great games, over 10-plus reception games, and it just showed. And, I mean, right after the season ended, he went to the Combine and dominated the Combine, having one of the top wide receiver running times, and also showed some great ball or on-field drill work. So Devin Duvernay definitely rose up. And like I said, I would have guaranteed that Kyle Johnson would have been the first Longhorn player, first receiver. He's not even a receiver. It's good, but you got studs in this class for the Longhorns with Duvernay, Brandon Jones, Colin Johnson, and Malcolm Rose. Those four be definitely drafted in this year's NFL draft.
Yeah, a lot of good Longhorns in this year's draft. And while we're not certain where these Longhorns will fall, the sports world has been pretty certain that for the last couple of months, LSU quarterback Joe Burrow will be taken number 1 overall by the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, would y'all say that Burrow at number 1 is a done deal, or could you argue that the Bengals could take a look at someone else for the top pick? David, we'll start with you.
Yeah, for me, no Louisiana bias on this one. There is absolutely no way there should be no debate right now for that number 1 overall pick. Let's look at Chase. Let's look at Chase Young's numbers: 10+ sacks in consecutive seasons. Obviously, just dominant on that defensive line, and then obviously Tua Tagovailoa, 30+ touchdowns in consecutive seasons. So obviously, we saw 2 seasons from 2 superstar players. Just great overall numbers altogether, and obviously, with Tua Tagovailoa, you have reservations concerning his injury history. But let's not act like Joe Burrow doesn't have reservations of his own. Obviously, we saw reports on his small 9-inch hands just a couple months that surfaced. But quite frankly, the only thing smaller than Joe Burrow's hands is his sample size at LSU. Yeah, he had 1 historical season, but I mean, I don't know. I look at Tua Tagovailoa again, 30+ touchdowns in consecutive seasons, whereas Joe Burrow's prior season, just obviously not as historic, just average numbers. So yeah, man, I'm not gonna be biased. I don't think you should dismiss the other guys, because again, Chase Young and Tua Tagovailoa, I think, are real players, and I think they'll have great careers wherever they go.
Wow, it's a bold statement, David, but you do bring up a good point. Chase Young and Tua Tagovailoa, obviously also incredible players. Zach, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to have to disagree with you here, David. Now, those guys are great, but I think this is a done deal with the number 1 pick. Joe Burrow has proven it all year that he deserved this pick. And if you told me if Tua did not get injured, though, I will admit, I might have been leaning towards Tua Tagovailoa. Like you said, you do get weird with these 1-year guys with sample size. We saw it 4 years back with Mitch Trubisky. He had 1 great year at North Carolina. It wasn't even the best year, but it was okay, and he got drafted number 2, and now he's in a quarterback competition. But Joe Burrow was just electric this year. He led a 15-0 team all the way to the championship. LSU, who's always been struggling at the quarterback position, and I think it was more just a fit at Ohio State than necessarily just, there was too many guys with Dwayne Haskins and JT Barrett. Joe Burrow just needed a place to play, and Ed Ogeron believes in him, and Joe Burrow delivered this year. It's definitely a close, and Chase Young's good, but if I'm the Bengals, don't get cute. Don't try to wait for Trevor Lawrence in the next year. I know you have Dalton, who's definitely a capable quarterback, but you got to get the quarterback of your future now. And Chase Young, yes, will be an excellent, excellent college NFL player, but you got to take Joe Burrow right now, and I think if you do, it will pay off.
Well, we'll certainly see, but Joe Burrow, as you mentioned, had an incredible season. But thanks to y'all, Zach and David, for joining us. And thanks to you, everyone, who tuned in to our show and spending your Monday night with us. We hope it was a small respite from the craziness of all that is going on in the world right now. To stay up to date on information about all of our shows, follow us on social media at TSTV Sports. Now, for Zach Leff, David West, Clark Dalton, our producer and director, Daniel Shi, who's doing this from Taiwan, and everyone else who helped out on this show, I'm Thomas Fitch. Have a good night.